Dr. Meaden says it's a complex electrical effect from that wind which creates the smaller satellite rings. His theory is closely argued and has won the cautious backing of a few scientists, although most weather experts remain sceptical. Dr. Meaden says his research will be completed in 2 years. At the moment, it's the only scientific theory available.
Well, his theory is quite appealing, isn't it, Professor?
Well, it appeals to the scientist in me. And I could imagine that there is something rather like micro-weather. And I could even imagine the lack of sympathy of meteorologists who really deal with macro-weather. And therefore, they haven't perhaps examined the very tiny things. And there are effects with very sharp edges, like ball lightning. I could imagine that ball lightning, which has got dimensions which are really sort of sitting room sized, that there are other effects which are perhaps allied with it, which could make these circles.
It does seem strange that we haven't recorded this before.
Well, we don't know. I mean, it could either be so usual in agricultural terms that before we had aeroplanes and therefore had an easy way of looking for them, people just accepted them, or perhaps that the trigger for them is something which we've only been doing for the last 40, 50 years. And I can think of a few things. High-power television stations, for instance, pour energy into the atmosphere. Aeroplanes pour enormous quantities of energy into the atmosphere. And it could be that something which does that doesn't actually produce the effect on the ground, but maybe the triggering effect which causes these micro-weather, micro-tornadoes to actually start.
So do you think it could be some military activity?
Well, if it was, and if it was a purposeful one, rather than a fallout or some, I would have thought to have kept it secret for so long, when even the merest government paper or the Zircon satellites and so on leak out very quickly. So purely from the sort of the leakiness of the security situation, I think it's unlikely. And
what do you think about the UFO theory? Do you think it's visiting spaceships?
Frankly, no. I'd love there to be visiting aliens and little green men, but the chances of them being so unextrovert, if they really wanted to find out about us, why land in remote cornfields and not in Trafalgar Square? If they really wanted to communicate with us, there would be much better ways of doing so. So they're either being extraordinarily ham-fisted aliens, or really not very likely.
All right. Well, let's look at our final report now. You remember, we brought in the army to see if they could carry off a convincing hoax. Let's rejoin the cadets of the Officer Training Corps as they set to work.
The girls' team opted for the simplest method they could think of. They joined arms and they marched. The boys opted for the best technology available, a stake and a rope. The girls' brute force is beginning to pay off. Already the corn's looking decidedly flat.
It's very easy to get the actual circumference, and then it's gone down very well. It's just like went down straight away as soon as you walk on it.
And sure enough, just 10 minutes after starting, a circle's beginning to emerge. Tim and Rob, though, are finding the going tougher. We also tried a helicopter to see if the downdraft from the rotors could make a circle without all that hard work. It fails to make even a small impression. Meanwhile, the girls' team has finished, and they're ready to go on and do more.
I think they're really quick to make. We could make another couple of dozen this afternoon if we really try.
The boys are getting there too, but they don't quite share the enthusiasm for the work.
They're getting better now. As you can see, at the start it was a little bit ragged.
Certainly when you get the hang of what you've got to do and the technique of it, it certainly comes a lot quicker.
And the CO's impressed too.
I really think it's possible that you can do it, somebody could be doing it like this. If it is somebody hoaxing, I think it's a marvellous practical joke. I really do.
But who on earth would want to?
Well, fortunately, our very helpful farmer didn't mind a little flattened corn for our experiment. But actually, that's very convincing, isn't it?
Quite shockingly convincing. I'm really shaken to the core. And if it is practical jokers, I take my hat off to them, literally, because to have kept it up for half a century and never let on Seems quite amazing.
Yes, who do you think might have been doing it, and why would they?
Well, I suppose one could imagine the secret society of circle makers who get their kicks out of rubbing their hands in secret and fooling everybody almost all the time.
Well, you joke, but actually you're listed in Who's Who as being a very keen practical joker, aren't you, Professor? Is it you behind all this?
Well, I wonder. But to be more serious, if I'm ever become really rich, which seems pretty unlikely, I would like to start a foundation for the perpetration of really big practical jokes, to which you make grant applications and which meets in secrets and will then support things of this kind.
And the circles would certainly fit in there, would it?
Yes, but not guilty on this occasion.
OK. Well, let me twist your arm then. What do you plump for?
I think, in spite of so convincing, I would still plump for meteorology, weather, some kind of little whirlwind with rather sharp edges, perhaps accompanied by electrical phenomena, which descends from the skies.
Despite the fact that no one's ever seen anything like this actually happening?
Yes, but whether actually clear air turbulence is invisible. There are invisible weather phenomena. And I think there may well be a relationship between ball lightning, which is also a very sharply delimited meteorological effect, and this sort of effect.
Do you think we should do some proper scientific research to lay this ghost once and for all?
Yes, I think one should certainly have some automated observation posts, which needn't be very expensive, on top of a telegraph pole, and have lots and lots and lots of those to see whether one can't actually see a circle being created.
Professor, thanks very much. Well, what do you think? The military, alien spaceships, some unidentified natural phenomenon, or just one of the most engaging practical jokes of the last few decades? From West on 2, good night.